So first off, I want to say thank you for choosing this session and welcome to Empowering Through Neuroscience. Our goal is to help you with strategies and move forward thinking about neuroscience in the brain. And before we dive in deeply to that, I want to introduce the team that is going to work with you through this learning today for this hour that we have together. So first off, I'm Andrew Hickman. I'm Director of Educational Technology from Capital Region ESD 113. My email address is there. Feel free to reach out to me anytime. I would love to work with you or support you in any way I can. With me, I have my colleague, Jen Flo. And Jen, do you want to introduce yourself to everybody here?
Sure. Hi, I'm Jen Flo. I'm the Regional Administrator for Advanced Learning and Teacher Support. So I work with a lot of programs and districts with highly capable and also new early career teachers. In my email, I'm jflo, not jlo, if you want to get a hold of me.
And our third person with us today is none other than Jeff Crawford. And Jeff, I'll let you introduce yourself.
I'm Jeff. I'm out of Spokane, Washington, ESD 101, and the details are on the slide.
Perfect. And we're more than happy to help assist you at anything we can. And we're really just helping facilitate this learning and hoping that it starts you off with wanting to learn more about neuroscience. I am completely fascinated with this subject, and these two know more than I do, and I've learned a ton from them already as well. So let's get started. Our goals today are to grow in our understanding of how to embrace neurodiversity, fuel brain growth, as well as overcome obstacles. So those are our three goals today. And we're going to dive in a little deeply to each of these topics, but there's always more that you can learn after the fact as well. And we'll talk about that later. So Jeff, I think you're starting us off.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. And again, reminding us all, we only have the short time, less than an hour for these. These are some stimulations for our brains to get us thinking about how to be empowered as educators. As we're thinking about working with anybody, we all have these brains. And so our first topic tonight, we're going to take a little time and think about embracing neurodiversity. Like, how are we different? How are our brains different? And I don't know about you, but I saw this graphic here, this picture. Do you see the old lady in the picture? I remember seeing this like in middle school or junior high. My teacher showed me this, and then I don't remember which version I saw, but maybe you know this. There's like, do you see the woman? There's like an old woman in the picture, and if you look carefully, there's a young woman looking away. It's one of those optical illusions. And it's one of those things like our brains just see things differently. So let's warm our brains up a little bit. Andrew, let's go to the next slide. And I'm going to challenge you. What do you see? Andrew's going to show us a picture real quickly. It's simple circles, some dots. And can you see if your brain, what does your brain see? What do you see? So Andrew, why don't you go ahead and show us this thing? What does your brain see? And I'll give you some private think time. What do you see when you see all of these dots? And if Andrew took it away, like, not that he's gonna, but if he did take it away, what would your brain remember where they were and how they're arranged? So I'm curious. What do you see? I'm going to go ahead and invite anybody who's willing to. We got a nice sized group today. Go ahead and unmute if you're willing. Andrew, go to the next slide. I'm going to try to annotate how we saw this. So I'm curious. When you see these dots, how did you see them laid out? What did you see? And I invite anybody to go ahead and unmute. A double-headed arrow, Mary's got. And Mary, I'm going to try to draw this out. A double-headed arrow.
And if you don't feel like unmuting, feel free to type it in the chat just like Mary did. We're more than willing to work that way as well.
Is that kind of what you're seeing, Mary? I'm trying to see if I see that.
I don't know if you can hear me. It usually cuts out.
We can hear
Zoom.
you. So is that what you're seeing, those double-headed arrows?
That's what hit me. That's
nice. Nice. Thumbs up. Anybody else see something like that?
Oh,
nice, wow. Beth. Now, Beth, did you see it the exact same way?
I saw something different. No, I saw a group of 4 at the top left.
A group of 4
5
at the top left?
Yeah, like 4 in a square. And then a group of 5 like on a dice, and then a single.
Wait a second. me sure I'm good in this.
So 5 next,
And then a single.
and then a single. But then it was interesting because when you said a line, then I saw them as 3 diagonal lines.
Okay, hold on. Your brain is all afire, and my brain is trying to catch up. So this is okay. But first, Beth, did I capture what you were saying? Because I want to make sure I got that right.
Yeah, that is the first way. That was
Okay.
my
Now, would you hold on to the other way that you did it? Because you're like perfect example. As soon as you hear somebody else do it, your brain is going to go, oh, maybe I could see it a different way. So for example, I see all these people in the chat, 2 groups of 5.
Yeah, there's a lot that we got to process. So let's start to process some of these, Jeff. Let's see what they're saying.
Yeah.
So here's another one.
2 groups of 5 mirroring each other. And I'm curious, is this a group of 5 that you were seeing that was mirroring each other? I've seen some people do this version. And Andrew, if you could go to the next one.
Okay.
There's another group of 5 that we often see. And there's another mirroring of 5. Oh my, Andrew, could you go another one? And I'm wondering as I read through things here, we got 4, 2, 4, 2, 3, 3, 3, 2, 3. All of these ones, I'm curious on the 2, 3, 3, 2s. Are we seeing 2?
Then we have 3
Yeah.
postage stamps laying diagonally.
Yeah.
Oh,
Chris, that's why you saw it?
Yep. The pattern, the 2, 3, 3, 2.
Or
Horizontally. Yep.
horizontally? Oh,
Yeah.
not the 2, 3, 3, 2 vertically?
I didn't see that.
But you saw 2, 3, 3, 2. I mean, it's
Yeah.
almost the same.
Yep.
All right. Now this is hurting my brain. Andrew, could you pull up the next 2? And I'm going to do this. I'm going to clear all drawings. And if anybody wants to annotate, because they know how to annotate, it's up at the top of the screen where it says you are viewing Andrew Hickman's screen. Under view options, you got annotate. If one of these hasn't been put up there and you want to, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to try to draw yours out there. See what we got. Oh boy. You see it maybe even a different way.
I'm going to clear them all, Jeff.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead. If you want to annotate, click the annotate button. And then feel free to draw on the dots how you see it.
I'm jumping in, Jeff. I can't
Go
handle
for it, Amy. You're welcome to go too. Yeah. How do you see things? Ooh, she sees the center square. And little arrowheads. Uh-huh. See somebody else doing, ooh, long diagonal and some pairs.
Oh, I like the figure 8 looking one.
Oh, look at that. Now, Andrew, I'm just kind of curious here. We only have 26 of us in the room, and there's only 10 dots. And there's all of these different ways that we see even only 10 dots. This is just amazing to me that with 10 dots, that's a lot simpler than the life that I have to go through. It's a lot simpler than teaching, just looking at 10 dots, and yet we see things so differently. That's called neurodiversity. We all have different perspectives on that. And I don't know about you, but I would love to just like think about all the different ways to see this. But for our time, we're going to move on to the next part. And let's do this. Andrew, could you take us to the next slide? Let's think about neurodiversity as this is something that we want to embrace with our classes. As we're thinking about activities and we're thinking about engaging our students, we're thinking about empowering them. How do we do that? So Andrew, next slide, please.
Yeah, and I want to just make one little comment on this activity. We do this activity a lot with students. If you haven't yet, I highly recommend it. And it really helps us see their thinking of how they process. So highly encourage doing something like this with your students.
Thank you, Andrew.
Or others. Staff members are fun too.
Yeah. So if you didn't know, like your thumbprints are unique to you, but it's universal. Everybody's got a thumbprint or fingerprint. And the way that thumbprint or fingerprint, it's unique, a lot like a retinal scan. You can be identified by that. Similarly, our brains, the way your brain's neural networks have grown and come together, and the way that you see things, it's not just the physical structure, but the way that your brain is going to see the world and to understand the world and interact with it, we're all unique. That's part of neurodiversity. We're all different. We're really similar because we have a lot of same components, but we're all unique. And so as Andrew said, any way we can embrace this diversity, it's going to be really helpful for us. Next slide. And as I think about neurodiversity and we're all different, I'm going to pull out a few different things and how we're diverse. And I'm taking this from the Universal Design for Learning. We'll put that in the chat for later, or you can just look up Universal Design for Learning. And you're going to see a lot of great resources on how we can embrace our uniqueness or our diversity. And as I think about it, first I want to think, how are we different in our methods of engagement? So with that, I'm curious, what would you do and what goes through your brain when you're deciding to join in? So if you're thinking about joining in on something like maybe a tug of war or a camp activity or something like that, what would you do in your brain? Curious. And go ahead and put that in the chat if you have an idea. What goes through your brain?
So we're seeing a couple. I'm going to just highlight a few of them. So Hannah said, are they going to accept me? That acceptance piece can be huge.
I choose the winning side. Mary, you grew up in a family like me.
What is the probability of getting embarrassed?
Ooh.
They want to wait to be invited. That feeling of nervousness.
Do I know how? Am I comfortable? Oh, there's one. Like even in our time tonight, like Andrew, people were speaking up with the dot talk and saying, "Oh, what could I do it?" And I wonder, what are all those things that go through your brain, even in the dot talk? Maybe it's not even a tug of war outside. Your brain, in the way that you engage, you are unique. It might be really similar. You might see things really similarly. You might engage really similarly, but you are unique. We are all diverse in the way that our brains and the way that we want to engage and the methods of how we engage and how quickly we engage. I might be really similar to you, Rennie, in one thing, but I might be really different than you in many other ways of engaging. Heidi, we might be really similar, but really different as well in different things. But my choice on how I want to engage, my brain's different than your brain. Really similar, but it's really different as well. So
there's two here that I think should be highlighted before we move on. I hope my competitiveness doesn't take over. I am one of those. I'm highly competitive. And then also go out and have fun because they may not know you. So if you make yourself a fool now, you may never meet them again. So just great ways to process.
There are a few of us like that in the chat, it looks like. I'm with you too.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah. So we got that in the chat. Thank you so much. Another way that we're diverse is not only in our methods of engagement. Next slide, Andrew, is our representations. The way that you represent the world, the way that your brain has a schema to understand things, the way that you understand gameplay, the way that you understand relationships, the way that you understand how learning happens, the way that you understand how a dinner should go together, the way that well, guess what? The way your brain represents the schema to hold it all together, it's different. We are all different. Might be really similar because of culture and experiences, and maybe even in your family or in your classrooms, but the way that your brain put it together, because it's your brain, even like with my hands right now, I'm doing these motions. I have to do it because that's the way my brain does it. And you can't mimic my hand gestures. It won't make sense to your brain. You have to make up your own hand gestures. That's a representation. Your representations are your own representations. They're yours, which is really, really cool. Andrew, how else are we diverse? We've got methods of engagement, we've got representations, and we've got actions and expressions. The way that we act, the way that we express who we are in our clothes, the way that we decide what words to choose, what words to say next to each other, how loud or quiet we say the words we say, or how fast and pointed. What do we do? Do we stand back? The way that we express ourselves. We have so many ways to express and to write things out. How about this one in your class? Do you have any kids who say IDK or they don't do anything? And they're like, that's their choice. That's their choice, especially in middle school and high school, or if you've got teenagers at home. They don't want to tell you about their day because you know what? They don't want to. That's their choice because that's how they want to express or act, which is really cool. And Andrew, what's our prompt for this section? Our prompt for this section as we're closing it up is thinking about in our neurodiversity, and this is, by the way, just a quick intro for it, we are diverse in the way that we engage, the way that we represent things, and the way that we act or express ourselves. And as we're thinking about this, how might you incorporate neurodiversity in your practice? whatever your role is, whatever your practice is, will you take a moment and think about that? How would you, or how do you, or how might you incorporate neurodiversity in your practice? And if you would, feel free to put that in the chat.
I'll start reading some of these out in a minute, but I want to give some time for people to think and comment. Okay, so I'm really starting to notice a theme with the first ones that have posted around choice and personal choice, especially if we have students or others in our job roles. So if you're an administrator, it might be choices for teachers. If you're a paraeducator, choices of how you work with groups of students. If you're a substitute, choices of how you work with educators as well as students. So choice is a big one that I'm seeing. Let them be themselves is another one that keeps popping up. Differentiation. Discovering interests. So understanding the people we work with's interests as well as our own is one that I'm seeing. We have a music teacher perspective. Have students draw while listening to music. Students have the chance to share at the end of 5 minutes. Show, picture, or tell. Modeling. Different ways of doing things.
I love it. And if we're going to be really mindful, and if you're going to have whatever it is, whether that's a good classroom environment or good experience with your colleagues or different things, if we can keep these things in mind, that the way that I want to engage and the way that you engage, or the way that you see the world or picture it or represent it, and the way that you want to act and I want to act and express ourselves, our brains physically are wired, and they're just like thumbprints. They're different. And as they're different, be mindful of those differences. I'm going to put it in the chat box there. If you're interested to see more about those details and how you might work on expressing these different levels of neurodiversity and how to engage learners, how to see those different representations and how to see those different actions and expressions, you can visit the UDL link there that's in the chat at UDL guidelines or Google search it if you want to. All right, Andrew, so we're going to embrace neurodiversity. That's one of the ways that we can empower our learners. We can empower ourselves. I got to remember that I'm different and that you're different and how your brain's wired, even though they're really similar. So what's next?
Well, next we're going to talk about fueling brain growth. So we're going to look at ways that we can fuel our brain growth and then think about how to grow our brains. And I love this image. It's such a good visual representation of thinking your brain in your hand and how can you expand it with all of the different neurons and etc. So I'm going to toss it back to you.
All right, so we're going to do another activity, and hopefully this activity is going to allow for neurodiversity and how you're engaging and how you're willing to choose to do that and how you represent things. So Andrew, this is a which one doesn't belong. So as Andrew's going to put up this picture, I invite you to think in your mind, when you look at these 4 images.
So before we go too far, don't post anything in the chat yet. We're going to do what's known as a chat storm.
Okay. So wait. So don't post anything yet. Got it. So which one doesn't belong for you? Would you get that in your mind? Look at these 4 images and see what your brain's doing with it. Just look at the image, investigate a little bit, imagine you being there. Whatever it is, just go ahead and let your brain be there for a minute. I'll give you some private think time. And then at the end, you're going to choose which one you think doesn't belong. And then in the chat box, but don't hit enter yet, put your reason. Which one doesn't belong in your reason? So let's give you 60 seconds to think. And maybe if you found one that doesn't belong for a reason, maybe you might find another one that doesn't belong for a reason, maybe a different reason.
So what we're going to want you to do in the chat, I put kind of a stem. So blank picture doesn't belong, and then we want to know your reason. So what we want you to do is type that in the chat, but don't push enter. Oh, too fast. But that's okay, Hannah.
Time's up. That was 60 seconds. Put it enter. Go for
Type
it.
it in the chat and now push enter.
Ooh, look at all this stuff I got to read. Snakes, because that makes my skin crawl. What? Never. I can't believe
Snakes do not belong. There are humans in each picture.
Ah.
Snakes, I can't even look at them.
Camera, the others are outdoors. I see that. The video production, it's indoors. Green screen, it doesn't occur in nature. Interesting. Oh, the diver. It's not a group. Interesting perspective. I love this. We all have different perspectives. Interesting.
Classroom versus not outside.
Inside versus outside. Yeah. And no people in the snakes. Yeah.
Chris says green screen picture because all other generate a physiological response.
Wait, they all do? Some type
Except
of
for the green
response?
screen.
Oh, interesting. We're going to come back to more of that later, but I want to just call out that this is really interesting is that as we embrace neurodiversity with activities like a which one doesn't belong, you get an opportunity to allow students to engage in various ways and to think about things in various ways and to express things in various ways. Because I want to be respectful for you, because each learner, each human is different in how you see the world, how you represent it, how you understand these things. So an activity like a which one doesn't belong or a dot talk, I'm going to leverage this idea that you're diverse or you're different maybe than the way I see things. And I want to bring that out. And let's go to the next slide. So I'm thinking about Andrew here now. If I'm thinking about how to fuel my brain, the first thing that we might do, and we have 4 quick ways to fuel your brain. There's a lot of great ways and great research out there on how to fuel your brain. And the first one is engage in directed play. So if you're engaging in directed play, you're going to be doing things and allowing kids, just like if maybe you remember playing with Legos or doing different things, or maybe playing with snakes or playing in the water, or maybe playing with video cameras or jumping off of cliffs and doing things, you are playing. But when you are engaged in directed play, there's like 3 main things that we'll call out. And Andrew, if you could hit those next buttons. One, we want to support curiosity with students and learners. We want to encourage exploration, and we want to treasure the struggle. And so I'm curious, when you saw this, which one doesn't belong? Hopefully I was engaging, or we were engaging you as learners, because we're all learners, in some type of directed play. I told you to look at it. And maybe it was that I gave you some private think time. And I asked you under some certain parameters to go ahead and think about what this looks like or sounds like or feels like, or imagine yourself there. I'm allowing time and space for your brain. That was a teacher move or a facilitator move that I was trying to be really intentional so that I could help you be engaged in some directed play. Now, granted, it was really short and it was limited to here, and it's not like being out with real snakes or off of cliffs, but it's still play and allows your brain to go where it wants to go. But it's directed, super powerful for your brains. Private think time. Yeah, that was good. All right.
I'm going to jump in here, Jeff, and talk a little bit about executive functions. And those are those mental skills that require us to use our working memory and some flexible thinking and exercising some self-control. Sometimes chocolate does not work well for me in self-control. Just saying. But this is that awareness of yourself and your surroundings. You're paying attention, you're organizing, you're planning, and you're starting to prioritize and thinking about how you're presenting in the spaces and understanding different points of view. And you have this self-motivation. You have this idea that you are driving your own and you're encouraging your own learning. So that self-monitoring of keeping track of what you're doing and where you're going and what you're thinking about. And let's go ahead and go to the next slide. And so when we were engaging in the which one doesn't belong, you were also having time there to think about, what you were paying attention to. You were looking at the attributes of it and you were accessing all those different features. And we asked you to choose one. You had to pick just one that you were thinking that stood out differently to you. So we were asking you to be aware of all the things that were important to you, things that you were aware of, and you had to have a reason why. You had to choose one and share in the chat. So which one doesn't belong? So engaging in all those functions at the same time challenges our brains to engage in all our experiences. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. I really appreciate that. Like, if we're going to do good facilitator moves, or we're going to be engaging each other and fueling our brain growth, one, if there's directed play, that was one way to help it. And then two, allowing me choice and voice, allowing me to engage my brain. That's really important for our brains to grow. The more that we do that, the stronger it is. It's like playing chess. You got to play chess to get better at chess. It's just one of those things. Interesting. So we got fueling our brain. We got engaging in directed play is one way to fuel your brain. We've got exercise executive functions. And then third, build neural connections. Gotta think about this for a second. 2 bullets on the slide say, seek multiple perspectives and use various representations. Okay, and I see that image. It's like a super highway of information, this stuff that's going on in my brain, these neural networks, they're firing away. And it's almost like a highway, if you would, or a road for things to connect with each other. I don't know if you know this about your brain, but in these neural pathways, they're what we use to access memories and to think through things and to do stuff, even like with our hands and climbing or cooking. All of these things, our brains are so powerful. You want to help grow up? Make multiple perspectives something valuable for you. Seek multiple perspectives and also use multiple or various representations. Because when you can connect one part of your brain with another part of your brain, or one network of your brain with another neural network in your brain, they'll start connecting with each other. Because we can build neural networks. We can also, or a pathway, and we can strengthen that neural pathway, and that myelin sheath gets stronger and stronger, so that becomes faster and faster and faster. But also we can connect these neural pathways. And the more that you can connect, the better and better. I love the science research on, like, like Einstein, and like, hey, what's his brain like? What was really going on? The one thing we keep finding out about people who are claimed to be genius or titled as genius, like an Einstein, they have more neural connectivity in their brain than the average human, but they've exercised it to get there. So if you want to build out your brain growth, you want to fuel brain growth, seek neural connections and build those neural connections. Andrew, that next picture that's going to pop up here is with the which one doesn't belong. So before you go to the next slide, I'm wondering, how do you as participants in our session part right here, how do you think that this activity in which one doesn't belong helped build neural connections? Or maybe even the dot talk earlier. How did that help build neural connections? Just think about that for a minute. You don't have to answer. You don't have to say anything. Just think about that. How did what you were doing help your brain build connections?
But if you want to answer, if you want to unmute and answer, we're more than happy to have you do that as well.
All right, we got 3 so far: engage in directed play, we got exercise executive functions, and build neural connections. One pathway to another pathway. Awesome. And I think we have 4. What's the 4th one here?
Let's go meta.
Let's go meta.
Let's go meta.
What do you mean, Jen? What's meta?
So going meta is that thinking about your thinking. And I don't know if you're drawn to that image on the right-hand side, but that digging in deeper, that looking inward and inward and inward and inward. But it's that thinking about your thinking where you're sharing, like for example, in the which one didn't belong, thinking about your response and weighing it against someone else's. What were you thinking for that invitation? Were you thinking, do I share that one? Is that one right? Is there another way to look about it? Is there a better one? So you start thinking about your thinking and you're questioning it. And then you're explaining your thinking and revising your thinking as you go. You might have even been asking yourself some questions about, what do I already know that could guide my learning? What thinking routines? Sometimes I've used, I used to think, but now I think. So now I'm thinking about my thinking in the past, and then I'm thinking about my thinking in the future, or even with now. Or something that worked really well as I was preparing for a task, or preparing for a lesson, or preparing for, say, a presentation you were giving on a St. Patrick's Day evening. I should remember to do this, or maybe not do this next time. So you're starting to think about your thinking and the actions that you take. So that is going meta, using those metacognition skills.
Jen, do you, or does anybody else, maybe a thumbs up, do you ever get caught like in the middle of something and you're thinking about your thinking so much that you get lost in it and you're like, what do I do now? Anybody else?
Guilty.
Yeah, going meta.
I'm appreciating some of the comments in the chat too about this. For example, the taking in others' perspectives and then thinking about that and looking for multiple answers as they're thinking about their thinking.
Mhm.
And then I also agree, talk out loud about my thinking. I do the same as well. We all talk to ourselves a little bit.
Oh, yes.
And that's part of being healthy. It's really good for your brain growth. I remember reading something, Jen, I can try to find, or maybe you have it referenced, but when we don't take time to even reflect at the end of a lesson for our students, or if you're teaching in a class, you don't take time to reflect or to synthesize, then your brain doesn't have time to consolidate that learning, and it just kind of fizzles away. It's like, and the data on it was just as effective to not have given a lesson if you don't do reflection, if you don't allow us to go meta, because our brains need to go meta. All right, so how are you fueling brain growth? This is an open-ended question in the chat box. How are you fueling brain growth? And so we were wondering, in your life with yourself, with learners, people around you, what are you doing to fuel your brain growth, or what might you want to do to fuel your brain growth? Would it be engaging in more directed play, exercising executive functions, building neural connections, going meta? And by the way, there are a lot of ways we can grow our brain, but here are 4 that we decided for tonight's session.
I would like to open the opportunity to use more than the chat as well. So if you want to unmute and talk about something, you're more than welcome to do that too.
You see, Colleen said, asking children to turn and talk. Boy, you're going to be building neural connections when you have to think about from somebody else's perspective. And matter of fact, there's like in mathematics where I am, there's the math language routines, which are intentional to help you turn and talk and go meta with your thinking. Because now I have to think about my thinking if I'm going to have to talk to somebody else, and I have to think about their thinking. So it's not only going meta, but it's helping me build neural connections. Directed play.
I'm seeing a lot of need more directed play. Teach kids how to teach each other. We do need personal reflection on our thinking as well.
May I add something?
Of course.
One of the things that I do 2 different things I think that would fall under directed play for supporting curiosity. I have what's called a black box, and every year I put some mystery items in a black box. It's, half the size of it's a very small box, but I tape it shut. I never let I have freshman science kids, and I make them ask yes or no questions, and then they have to have conversations with each other as to how their questioning should progress, and whether or not they're drawing a conclusion based on their data that they're gathering from their questioning. And then the other thing that I do is, not so much this year because we haven't had kids on Fridays. I used to have do have a Freaky Friday section where I let them choose a topic of discussion that's, something that they're curious about in the universe, in the world, something that generates a conversation with the kids in the classroom. And we do get a lot of different perspectives when we go, dinosaurs and, all sorts of things. But I think with regard to that fueling brain growth, I tend to lean toward that directed play with the curiosity thing. Thank you.
Feel good for us.
It's such a
Thanks, Lenny.
And I've done the black box as well. I used to be a middle school 6th, 7th, 8th grade science STEM teacher, and we had something similar. And they loved it. And of course, you got to make it some really weird, obscure item.
Stacy, you had a high five there or a hand up? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I wanted to, it's kind of a tweak from when we were talking about the neural connections and talking about how they're made and increasing that. And someone posted the neurons that fire together, wire together. And I think understanding that in the reverse and neuroplasticity to try and help our students, because some of them have been wired together in a way that is not beneficial to them. And certain stimuli will set them off in a certain way. And we have to understand that that's part of their neural differences, which is why some kids need to be approached differently than others in the same situation, and why some kids need longer response time than others. So when we're getting these littles, we're not, I mean, we have to build all these connections, but there are some connections we have to break and try and repair, well, not necessarily repair, but rematch with other neural networks. I think that's especially, I'm kindergarten, so especially at a primary level, understanding the primal part of the brain growth, I think it's really important to keep in mind.
I'm with you. That's like a perfect segue. Thanks, Stacy, for that, because Jen's going to look at now this next section about how do we avoid obstacles. Because if we're thinking about really empowering our brains and the brains of our learners, Stacy, you called it out right. When a kid's sitting across the table from you, you don't know what their experience was. You don't know who they were. You don't know what their day was like. You don't know how their brain is wired. We don't have x-ray machines that just show us all of the wiring and go, oh, this kid's going to get really angry and storm out of the room when I say that. We just don't know how they're going to be. It's just who they are. So Jen, what do we got here? Overcoming obstacles.
We do. I'm going to go back to Stacy 1 second. You're going to have to bear with my neural pathway. I went down a little pathway. And I think she touched on something really important too, that I just want to highlight. And that is that when we do have students or others in front of us, when they have those opportunities to have a lot of experiences, she's absolutely right. That neural pathway gets strengthened, and it also happens faster. Because that pathway, if you imagine a trail that you go down that's, kind of been walked on a few times, it's a little bit harder to follow, but the more often you go down them, they become wider, more like highways. And so it's faster. Sometimes those experiences can be faster for students. And so slowing down and understanding that it's not even just how they're wired, but in addition to that, if they have frequent experiences, they go faster down those pathways. And so trying to create other pathways and slow them down. So thank you for my bird walk. So thinking about overcoming obstacles, we often think about the external factors that are happening for students, but the neuroscience is actually showing us that it's also, what we were just talking about, it's how they're made and how the experiences that we have, and it's so much more complex. And it can involve the relationships that we have, helping avoid amygdala hijack, and then also some of that strengths-based language and some of those things that we can have. So Andrew, thank you. So I'm going to ask everyone to pause, and we're going to do a chat waterfall again. But I want you to think back to your youth. And I've got 5 questions here for you to think about. And who showed you that you mattered to them? Who pushed you to keep getting better? Who helped keep you on task to achieve your goals? And who treated you with respect and gave you a say in decision making? And then who helped you with the places and people and ideas that broadened your world? Take a moment to think about who this person might have been or not, and then why that was important to you. And then we're going to ask you to put that into the chat, but don't click enter just yet, please. We'll take about 60 seconds. I think we're probably getting close. So on the count of 3, go ahead and push enter. 1, 2, 3. And what I love about waterfalls is you can actually now scroll back up and see all of the responses. I see professors and grandparents and coaches, parents, again, lots of parents, sisters and siblings and teachers. And so all those different folks that have been that person to you. And so not only is it the neuroscience, but it's also these relationships that affect our brain and affect our learning. Andrew, can you go ahead and go to the next slide? So the Search for Institute recently released some research, and that students who have strong developmental relationships are 21 times more likely to manage their emotions well in the face of stress and trauma. They are more likely to engage in management and have the strategies and have those skills that will help them with that. I'm gonna have you do one more click, Andrew. They're also more likely to take responsibility for their actions, and 5 times more likely to be good at making and keeping plans, and 4 times more likely to have a sense of purpose in their life. And I think what this really showed to me is that that students, teachers, all of us do well when we can and when we have the relationships to help support our brains in doing that work. And I want to show a little bit more data about the strong relationships because the Search Institute highlighted 5 attributes that go along with them, that are key to those. And that is expanding possibilities, that when students experience a developmental relationship, they have someone that is helping them see beyond where they are, someone who is expressing care to them and providing support and letting them know that they matter, that when they come or when they show up for an opportunity. They also have a shared power. They have that voice that we were talking about with Jeff earlier. They have that opportunity to engage in the environment and feel like they are a part of it. They also have support and scaffolds for help with their learning, and also an opportunity for challenge and growth. There's someone behind them. You may have heard the term warm demander, but somebody who is offering this empathetic nature, but is also challenging them to grow and to step into maybe beyond their comfort zone. And so those 5 attributes were keyed back to those questions that we were just talking about. And so when we have those adults in our lives or have those folks in our environment, they help us with that relationship and help us with those pieces. So I'm going to invite everyone to engage in some possibility thinking. And I love the word possibility versus the word suggestion. The idea of having possibilities implies that someone can say no to a possibility, where if we offer a suggestion to someone, there's kind of a little bit of a hesitation and a little bit of an expectation that we should take a suggestion. But the idea of possibility thinking allows you a little more wiggle room to weigh the pros and cons and to think about how something might situate with you. But I'm going to ask you to engage some possibility thinking about these 5 different areas. And as you're looking at them, how might you use one of them to support yourself or to support others in their work? I'm going to invite you to put those into the chat. Empowering others, that connection to others and giving them that ability to see and care and shared power. Some productive boundaries. Self-talk, absolutely. Positive self-talk.
Self-talk is an interesting one for me. I recently saw a video of having a 2-year-old who's just learning how to talk, do positive self-talk and encouraging themselves as they move forward. It was an interesting video to see how that works.
It's one of the things I think is harder to do for ourselves. We encourage it in others, but it's often a hard grace to give ourselves to give that positive self-talk. smiling and listening. I think
Parent-
smiling too. Mhm.
Parent to Parent Academy to engage in learning.
Oh, I want to know more. And there's so much that we do that can engage before we even come into a classroom or into a space, and how we even enter a space can start setting those foundations too.
I think the powerful thing for me, and I'm reading all these comments in the chat as well, is this is for everyone, no matter what role you're in. So teachers, administrators, paraeducators, substitutes, even just in our personal lives,
Mhm.
that these strategies can help with the developmental relationships. Listen more than we speak. I love that one.
Mhm. Hugs. I miss hugs. Letting others speak their truth and giving space for their truth. Absolutely. Smart goals.
But I like the mentoring piece on it. So
Mhm.
mentoring how to set SMART goals gives the person the power. Okay, so we're going to continue on. Thank you for that.
So with that in mind, and we're thinking about who we are, we're going to go back to the pictures you were picking and which one doesn't belong, because as Jen is helping us out thinking about obstacles and avoiding obstacles, we're thinking about those things we can do to like strengthen relationships and strengthen who we are, and that's going to help us avoid those obstacles. So I'm just curious also, there's this thing in your brain called the amygdala, and I loved how seeing it in the chat. I think a couple of you, it was Carla was one of them, if I remember. And if you want to, could you do this? Grab the annotate tool off the top again under you're viewing Andrew's screen, view options, annotate. And I'm going to put one like if I asked you, would you be interested in this picture? You don't even know what it is. Like maybe we're going to go play with them. Maybe you can go take a bath with them, walk through it barefoot. Whatever it is. And you know, your brain right now might be having a reaction. It's called your amygdala response. Where are you at? Like, you know what? I'm in. Like, this is totally exciting. I can't wait. Stacy, I see, has done that. Eric's over there. And Andrew, could you do this too? I think under your options, you can turn off who it is so we don't get to see who's annotating. Then we can get more of the anonymous on this. But yeah, look at this. Boy, snakes, those cause for a lot of us a quick, no way, I'm not going to do this. And by the way, if you don't have annotation on your device, you can type it in the chat and give it some type of scale if you want to. I just love seeing how we all feel differently about these things, like even with the snake. And it's about neurodiversity. We all react differently.
Okay, so
Andrew, how about the next?
Keep going. Oops.
Off the chart, no way, Beth said. How about this one? How about diving underwater? Where would you be for this one? What's your amygdala response telling you? What's your brain inside that little almond-shaped thing? Oh, I love it. I'm so in. That's me. I'm way over there too. And somebody's like, no way. I'd rather play with snakes. Mary's saying, it's really interesting. We're all different. And so our responses are different as well. I love this.
Okay, I'm going to clear and go to the next one.
Yep. What if you're doing cliff jumping? Jumping off something high? Man, you might be all over the place. Look at that. We're like, boom, such different reactions. Oh, by the way, there's this neurodiversity thing that we all have this brain, this neural network, and we react differently. Your brain has been trained and your brain reacts differently, and maybe mine does. Super interesting. And the last one, Andrew, the recording studio one, if I told you that we're going to put you in front of a group of people, a matter of fact, we're going to do it this way. We're going to record your lesson or what you do professionally. We're going to record it. And we're going to put it up on the news for everybody to see at Washington State or on the YouTubes or wherever you want to put it. Some of us feel really different about that. That might generate an amygdala response out of that. And Jen, can you tell us more about these amygdala responses and what this thing is?
Sure. A little bit of what was happening, kind of a science view there. When you started looking at those images, you had a reticulating activating system that is actually, it's like kind of like your brain's security camera. And it's always searching for threats and always searching for dangers that might be coming. And so it's always on alert. And when it sees something, when it anticipates a threat, and I don't know, I was mostly against the diving thing. I have a thing about head underwater, but it instantly releases cortisol into your from your adrenal glands, and it goes to the amygdala. It signals that. And so the amygdala, reticulating activating system, is your security camera, and the amygdala is kind of your alarm system. It immediately starts to go off, and it's what causes the fight, flight, freeze, or even appease response that you have. So it cuts off your higher order thinking, your creative problem solving, and it goes right to that primitive brain and focuses you there on that immediate, that personal, and that strong response. And it has shut off everything else because it's fighting for survival. So you've gone right into survival. So as you think about, just real quick, some of the experiences you may have seen or something you may have experienced, what might be the physical attribute of an amygdala hijack? What might it look like?
I'm going to encourage you to just process that. I'm very aware of our time. So just have that in your head and we'll keep going. So what could that hijack look like for you or for others? So
that feeling that your skin's crawling, that was in the chat earlier, and that's for
heart
sure.
racing, anxiety, hyperventilating. Perfect. Okay.
Yeah. And it may evoke a physical reaction. It may evoke hitting or striking out some way, throwing something. One of the things that I found empowering to use is to have representation built. And this is an example of a representation that was built on a field trip that I was on. And so creating something that is outside of yourself, not only does it give someone time to think about what happened and to build a model of it, but it also gives it a time for your amygdala and for those hormones, that cortisol, to kind of run through and be out of your system. And that can take like 15 to 17 minutes for that cortisol to clear your brain and for you to come back. And so then it's outside in front of you, it's no longer within you, and that can help with representations, so creating those representations. Something else that is very powerful is this idea of using Balavix, which is a auditory and also a physical routine that you can use. And we're going to show just a snip of this video. It's about 30 seconds.
This is Balavix. It stands for Balance Auditory Visual Exercises. It's a series of exercises, most of which are done with sand-filled bags or racquetballs. At Kennedy Elementary in Norman, almost every student has been introduced to the program. And for some students, like Max Wages, it has been life-changing.
For me, it helps me focus, and if I do work, I didn't mean to do that. But if I do work and I get frustrated, I just do Balavix.
It's a powerful routine that engages students in auditory because they're listening to the sound of the ball. They're also engaging in the pattern and they're focused, but also that you're crossing midline and doing all sorts of things that actually build and strengthen your brain. I encourage you to watch that or learn more about Balavix. We can share more about that. We're going to jump over to the next slide. Which is also this idea of, I called it bring on the happy, that we want to, in our classrooms and in our spaces and in where we work with our teams, to promote that collaboration and self-efficacy. And it's funny that our brain actually seeks it. It has more than one way to build that. There's norepinephrine, which builds anticipation, much like our dots and our activities that we were doing earlier. There's dopamine, that feeling of success when you complete a task or you've sent that email that needed to get sent. The serotonin that helps you feel good and feel part, and it's a social piece of us. And then the oxytocin, that's our bonding and trust and teamwork. And so I will often say it's in with the dopamine and out with the cortisol to help build those, bringing on the happy. And so how do you increase we're just going to encourage you to share in the chat, but how do you increase positive neurotransmitters? How do you bring on the happy?
And so as we put how we bring on the happy, we're looking at our time. I don't want to keep anybody from meeting with their other ESDs. So we're gonna wrap kind of this up with our closing. And really the process is today, we're starting to understand that all of our brains have different neurodiversity, and really wanting to come full circle and think of the ways that we can work together or on ourselves or for our students or for our job roles, etc., using neuroscience to empower us moving forward. And you're listing strategies in the chat right now that will help with that. Having those positive outlooks and ways to do it are a good focus. And I'm also loving that people are annotating, because it tells me that you learned a trick in this as well, which I'm happy about. Now, before you leave, we have one more thing we want to show, and this is just kind of finish up and closing. It's 2 minutes long, which will get you right out of time to get to your next session. So if you can stay and watch this, I highly encourage watching the whole video later. This is a poem that really talks about the diversity in our brains. So very, very powerful. So just a quick 2 minutes.
Let's talk about misguided, because I think it's really common, where goals and aims and programming are all what staff and mom want. It's not to say these humans don't have some good intentions, but most of you are operating from neurotypical conventions, from norms and your experience, from what you find effective. Ironically, it's all of you that need to learn to take perspective. Autistic people have different brains that are different in their wiring, and functioning in a same brain world is challenging and it's tiring. The world was made for NT brains and made by them too. The world was made by and for people with brains like you. Too much of current practice aims to make different look the same, but I assure you different things work better for supporting different brains.
So just really bringing back home that we need to think about how all brains and perspective work. This was focusing on looking at people with autism and Asperger's syndrome, and how their brains might be wired differently than ours, and so they process differently than we do. But understanding that helps us interact with all people using their different styles. So with that, I want to thank you all for coming today, and thank you, Jen and Jeff. You're all amazing, and we hope that you are going to take something back. I'm going to paste once again how to make a copy of this slide deck in the chat if you want a copy of this. And I'm going to let you know that we are going to follow up with this presentation and create a much deeper dive course if you want to do deeper research into neuroscience and how to empower yourself and others. So that will be coming on the horizon. This was just a preview.
And Andrew, if you could go to the slide with our emails on it, I want to invite everybody. If you're interested to be part of that work, more than what we did tonight, but no more of a deeper dive into neuroscience around these topics that we talked about. Even Stacy, you brought up this idea of neuroplasticity. That's another one. We talked about it like, oh, we don't have enough time. If you're interested, email us. We'd be glad and happy to continue the work together. Thank you, everybody. And I do see in the chat, there's a link to the sites for tonight, so we can get to our ESD breakout time. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate you.
Yep. So your next step is to go with your ESD. If you go back to the main website for the agenda, find your ESD at the very bottom and attend. So Jeff has pasted that in the chat. So feel free to click there, find your ESD, and go meet with your group. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.